Thanks everyone for coming on. These webinars are gaining in popularity, and that is super awesome and humbling. Thank you very much. We did not think these were going to take off the way that they have. So if you're watching this on YouTube, if you could like or subscribe, that would help us out a lot. Kind of puts us up higher in the search options. That would be awesome. So like I was saying, we've got a really awesome panel tonight. So there's actually a decent amount of straight grain farms on tonight, as we noticed. So we're going to hit the corn intercropping from all different sides. So Scott, like I said, has an amazing data set and has probably researched this more than anyone. He's got different data as far as biomass for, say, cattle farms and silage, and cropping data from a grain farm's perspective. And then on our farm, I realized what an invaluable resource Scott is. We did a 10-acre trial field with like 60 different treatments this year that we combined. It was a nightmare and just a horrendous amount of time. It made me appreciate the work that these researchers do to get accurate data. So I'm going to kind of go over what we saw on our trials. And then Darcy did a corn intercrop trial with forage soybeans for silage. So he's going to talk about his experience. And like I say, if you got questions during the presentations, put them in the Q&A, and we're going to try our best to get to as many as possible as we can before it gets too late. So without further ado, Scott, if you want to take your video and mic off. So Scott Chalmers has been running the Wado research farm since 2012. Like I said, this would not be happening at all unless I had met Scott and got to pick his brain on some of these corn intercrops. So Scott, tell us about yourself and we'll get into the presentation. And thanks for being on.
Sure. I grew up on a mixed farm near Carroll, just east of Zurich, growing up, and we only had 3 quarters, and Dad was doing 1/3 summer fall at the time, and just rips knotting the soil up, and we had hills, so you could see the clay tops, and I knew kind of things, weren't going to go any further. So with farming, I decided to go to university and get a degree. I'm actually a botanist and chemist by trade, but all my experience has always pulled me into the farming business. I had a few years at Ag Canada as a summer student, and then I managed Redvers Research Farm for 3 years. And since actually 2007, I've been at Wado. I was a technician then, and then now since 2012, like you mentioned, I'm a specialist there. And one of the things I like to do is dabble into the intercrop business, because I believe there is something there. So I call it companion cropping, but there's several ways to look at that. So yeah, that's me there, Wado, and we're funded by the province, and also with the feds, they have a little bit there too that they're funding as well with CAP.
So Scott, I'll stop you. I can tell we've got a decent delay. So if you want me to go back or skip ahead, we're
good here.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, so intercrops and relay crops or cover crops are all companion cropping. This is where you have 2 or more species together, and the idea is to maybe utilize more water, nutrients, light, or time in the same place. So next slide. Just an example of some of the pea canola work we've done. There is some nitrogen sharing, and that is actually a real thing. At first, I was skeptical whether that was happening. We knew that peas were a little leaky with their nitrogen. Actually, up to about 40% of their budget gets leaked out into their surrounding roots, and it was, in other literature, it was saying it was being picked up by the non-fixing crop. So we'll go to the next slide. So Melanie Reed, she just did her master's in Saskatchewan a couple of years ago here, and she just wrote her master's saying that a significant amount of nitrogen fixation is transferred. And so they measured using isotopic nitrogen. And so they turned on the nitrogen gas that was labeled with radioactive isotope into the plot. They followed the isotope down into the root zone, and it did transfer into the white mustard. So they found anywhere from 14 to 41% of that nitrogen was transferred into the white mustard. So that really blew me away. I didn't think it was that much. I thought maybe 5 to 15%, but 44% of fixed nitrogen. That's that's robbing the cradle for nitrogen. So
Scott,
we'll go to the next slide.
Well, sorry, I just for everyone watching, I told Scott beforehand, I'm like, we probably got to burn through a few slides because I'm going to ask some questions, but I'm going to ask a question here that I know I told you to try and keep it condensed, but it's a doozy. We get asked this all the time. Okay, so peas and canola or mustard, we're dealing with a mycorrhizal dependent plant in a brassica. It's like, what is the relationship between an intercrop, say a mycorrhizal dependent one and a brassica, and say 2 mycorrhizal dependent ones? Or is there data on this?
I don't know if there's data on the mycorrhizal, but on the rhizobia association, there's a bit more work done in Europe. And just now that I think of it with this slide, one of the unique parts of this was they compared alternate rows to mixed rows, and the mixed rows by far had way more nitrogen transfer. And that just makes sense because the roots are growing on top of each other compared to alternate rows of the crops. So great proof in the pudding. And we were looking at this before, but could never measure it because we don't have isotopic nitrogen that way. So, but the guys at U of S did. So next slide. Yeah, this is going years back at Wato. We were looking at pea canola in alternate or mixed rows or double rows or even triple rows. And the further away you got from a mixed row situation, the worse the crop got. So we knew there was some association going on there, but we just didn't know what it was. But now we understand it. At least it's we know that we're using more water because our plots are drier in mixed rows. But also there's probably this nitrogen transfer going on. And the next slide is be good. This is where it gets really crazy, is on a wet year, that transfer is really pronounced. So on dry years, we find it's difficult to get intercropping responses, but on the wet years, it's just tremendous. And I think it's because everything is moving so quick in chemistry. The water is there to do this. And when it's steamy outside, boy, things really happen in the ground. And so in this situation, the tall bars are the mixed rows and the shorter bars are the alternate rows. And again, this is where we see this association happening. Next slide. And
those bars are yield, Scott?
That's yield, like land equivalent ratio, the amount of land it would take to grow that crop in its parts.
Right.
Yeah. So we're really thinking hard on this, and I know probably moving forward, there's going to be lots of BMPs thinking about this, but farming on the shoulder seasons here, all I did is I took some of the numbers, the growing degree days on, between the frost free zone and compared it to outside, where anything above 0 as normal would be considered a some sort of growing degree day, and I counted all that. And if you go to the next slide there, this is kind of the 5-year average. And we found there's actually 27% more corn heat units on the shoulder seasons that we're not utilizing. And if we could turn that into something where we're using moisture or sunlight or fixing something for nitrogen, I think we can really increase our margins here. So next slide. So back in 2016, one of our board members in Pearson, he grew corn and vetch together. So we were just kind of dabbling with it at the time, and he was going to graze this anyway. But the cobs really sized up. The vetch was quite prolific, and I think at the time the price of corn was something like $6 or $7 a bushel. It was really intimidating to see that kind of corn and not go after it with the combine. But now in hindsight, seeing how the vetch crawled up the corn there, I would be very cautious about going in with the combine with the vetch, getting right up there with the cob. I know with a corn header in our plots, if we don't stomp down the vetch, the vetch gets caught inside the corn header, and it wraps around all kinds of stuff. So, if you're going to pick a corn, I would pick one that cobs high if you're going for grain, and keep your population up so that the vetch is suppressed as much as possible. So with this situation here in Pearson, they used a seed hawk and a special corn metering system for a roller, and it was a single pass, so they're doing fertilizer, vetch, and corn all at once.
Any idea the pounds on the vetch there, Scott?
That one I think was about 12 pounds of vetch an acre, and probably about 26,000 for corn plants per acre. So that farmer feels that they're saving about 40 cents per pound gain per cow per day, which they feel is a huge, significant saving. And this is with the bison. So they seem to love it. It works good.
Well, that's going to be a reoccurring theme.
Yeah. So we've been looking at in the past here the rate of glyphosate we can use safely without killing the vetch. Although we found out we can actually kill vetch with our Roundup. We were using 540 Roundup, and we were hitting 1.5 liters, and the vetch still wasn't dying. It would certainly get injured, but it would eventually grow back. But we actually found about 0.5 liter of 540 is about the sweet spot. And if it's at like 0.2 of a liter, it's just not enough. And even we're getting some weed escapes. And so we did
Scott,
find that, yeah.
I got a question, just and if I'm burying the lead here, just tell me, it's coming up later. But in I found that's about the sweet spot too. Like 200 to 250 grams seems to give you pretty good coverage, and like it damages the vetch, but it, depending on conditions, like it's not going to kill it. But what if you need to come in with another pass? Have you guys done testing on that? And I mean, I guess I'm saying this because I have done this and absolutely smoked it coming in 10 or 11 days later.
Yeah, I think we've done 2/3 of a liter units, like as a split, so 0.3, and then come in 14 days later with another 0.3. That's okay. We've also done 2.5ers, but we find if you get your timing right, just a single 0.5 liter will work. But now, moving on in my presentation here, we're going to find out, well, what are we going to do about Roundup Ready Kochia? Because that's becoming a big deal out our way. And we need options. Otherwise, we're just going to be growing corn and kochia.
Yeah.
But I'll talk about that in a little bit. Our recent research here, which actually was a master's thesis for, or a bachelor's thesis for one of our summer students. We've done this for 2 years now. We're looking at corn seeding rates with or without vetch. So we have 3 different seeding rates. I think it's starting at 20,000 and going all the way up to 32,000. I see there. Yeah. And then we just basically have the vetch, and we're having to seed about 20 pounds to the acre because we're using some older seed. But I think you could probably pull that quite a bit back. So our main questions were, does the vetch affect the corn yield? Our second question being, does corn population affect the vetch potential? And our third question being, let's compare biomass and feed value of all feeding scenarios, whether you decide to combine the corn or not, or you decide to graze it all or not, or whatever works out. So we looked at all that.
Scott, the question that comes up all the time is like, when are you seeding the vetch?
So we're seeding vetch at the same time as the corn. So we pre-band our vetch and our fertilizer. We're probably, I think we're fertilizing up to 120 pounds an acre, including the soil test. And then we're putting on about 30 pounds of phos, 30 pounds of K and some sulfur, boron, zinc, copper, and at single digit poundage. But the idea is try to mimic maybe what a grazing situation might be, not a total grain corn situation, but just grazing.
Right.
Next slide. Yeah. So we looked at a lot of things. We looked at the weeds, and we're actually reducing our weed count, or actually our weed biomass, by almost 3/4, significantly. So the vetch is out competing the weeds, and our major weeds are probably the Roundup kochia. We have red root pigweed, and all the bad guys. But we had decent weed control, considering it's a half liter with suspected kochia that's Roundup resistant. Next slide. So this is the results here. If you see a letter after the number, that means it's if it's different, that means it's significantly different. So an A is different than a B. And so looking at the top left square, we have a 2-year grain corn yield. So we've combined 2 years of data, and this is replicated plots. We were without vetch, our grain yield was like 60 to 100 kgs per hectare, and that's roughly around 109 bushel the acre, I believe. And then with the vetch, it did give us a yield penalty of 16%, around 52.50, and so we're dropping around to about 95 bushel the acre with the grain. Then if we look at the population side, so we're looking at top right, moving from 20,000 to all the way to 32,000 plants for corn. We were getting a little bit of a yield bump there. That's normal for grain. I wouldn't seed grain below 26,000 personally. And then bottom left, total field biomass. If we have vetch or not, it didn't really matter. We had the same statistical biomass. It's not like we're getting more biomass by having the vetch, it's just the same amount. And I think there's some compromising going on there between the two crops. And then if we look at
Scott, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just wanted to touch on that point. So you and I had talked about this when we were at Ag Days together. Like, when you say compromise, like how big of a, like, do you think that's going to be, like, if you tested this for 50 years, do you think that's going to stay true? Whereas the biomass potential,
I think we've had 2 dry years in a row that we've tested this, and I'm just waiting for a wet year to see that. When we talked about pea canola doing so good under a wet year, I would like to see this happen in a wet year and actually see if there's some greater interaction going on. So yeah, time will tell. I'm not sure if we're going to get around to this project this year, but if the conditions are right, where we're kind of entering into a wet cycle, maybe I'll try and do it. So looking at the bottom right, this is the population factor. And again, it didn't really matter what population of corn we used, which was actually good news because corn seed is expensive. But the vetch will make up for that gap in biomass potential. So If we cut back on the corn, the vetch will pick up the slack. But we're never going to do better in dry conditions, I would say. So always as is. So the next slide. So this is where we get to the feed test. And this is where it kind of gets cool, because if you look down the left side, we list all the different scenarios that a producer might want to do this kind of concept. So, and we compared it to the corn only, without grain or with grain, as if it was being used for grazing situation. And anytime we had the vetch in the situation, it was always a better thing in terms of feed tests. We knew that would be a thing, but to quantify that, here it is. And so say you had corn only with the grain, so that's the second tier there. You're looking at a relative feed value of, roughly 155 probably on average. And then as soon as you put the vetch in there, it actually kicks it up a bit. So we were looking anywhere from 143 to 170. That was, that's kind of cool. And then if you look at other things like the energy or TDN, it's always doing better. So you can, I think people can come back to the video and take a look at this chart and really decipher it out. But, we're gaining on crude protein, we're gaining on energy, we're gaining on relative feed value or TDN. Even the phos values are doing better. So that's pretty cool. So we'll go to the next slide. And this is just kind of the summary of the system. We basically seen no grain corn yield loss in some years with wetter years, but if they're drier years, we do. Suppress in-season weeds, yes, it sure does. We fix what I think is about, I've run the economics, the entire field. We looked at soil tests, the biomass and everything. And we're running about 25 pounds an acre of additional nitrogen in the whole system of the field by having the vetch.
So Scott, because I'm gonna touch on in our part, like we did soil tests this fall, like when I guess how much variability is there in, because this is something farms are truly interested in. It is correlated perfectly with the price of nitrogen. It's like, how much variability is there in that nitrogen number? Of course, like a drier year, it's awful. Like the vetch just does not survive well in those conditions. But like, when are you doing your soil tests, and how much variability is there in that number?
So we do a spring soil test over the entire project, and then in the fall we do it by plot. And we barely see any difference in the soil test itself in terms of like residual N, maybe in excess with the hairy vetch plots. We never see that. But where that nitrogen mostly is in the biomass above ground. So in the greenery, that's where we find lots of it. And then, we run the numbers backwards through protein values based on our total biomass. And so if you took, 1,000 pounds and we had 25% protein on it, then of that, there's only 6.25% is actually nitrogen. So it only runs around, say, 25 pounds an acre. That's kind of how we look at it. We compare it back to the monocrop corn, and we're always about 25 pounds better by having the vetch.
Right.
So, we seem to be getting better feed quality. That's great. We're not getting more biomass, but I'd love to see it on a wet year. We use a 0.5 liter equivalent Roundup. Best used as a grazing practice. We find that if we combine it, we're running into issues with our corn header. And of course, I've combined corn with a straight cut header, and it's a nightmare. So, pick a corn that's tall, that cob's high, and make sure it's dense and don't have gaps in the field, because that's where the vetch will find a spot to grow. Some drawbacks here in the X's is that vetch can volunteer. We've had mature seed grow in this system for sure, so that's going to cause problems next year. Make sure you have a herbicide to get out of that next year and maybe the year after, because about 25% of vetch remains dormant as seed. So and then we also might be sheltering cutworms, but bugs are always an issue in any crop. And then the other thing with the vetch, may wind on the corn header chains and the silage reapers. I've heard of
We got
silage.
what you were going. We got what you were going for.
Yeah, silage harvesters have a hard time getting through the vetch. It gets tangled up in the reapers. So just things to think about. And so we also looked at herbicides. And, you know, if you look at the very bottom, that's the hand weeded check. We had 16 actually other herbicides here that we looked at. And the idea, we're looking at different emergent herbicides, some in-crop ones as well. And we're looking for tolerance or control for hairy vetch. And so we had different things there. It looks like we had heat, Mextrol or Buctolem, Volterra, Prime Extra 2, Spike, pyroxasulfone, Armazon, Interline, Muster, Assert, Roundup, MCPA, Coral, Buctolem in crop, 2,4-D in crop, Banville in crop, and then we just hand weeded the plot. So we'll go to the results here. And the visual image there, if it's green, it's got vetch. If it doesn't, that means it died. And then as you look at, there's like a pre or in crop note there on under each number. And you know, things that surprised me were heat. This is good news because now we can control kochia before, you know, as a burn off in corn. Mextrol is great. It didn't have residual with the MCPA part. Volterra was okay, but the Prime Extra 2, I think, which has Avidex in it, or not Avidex, starts with an A, I can't remember. It just smoked it. And then Spike was okay. That's not bad news. Pyroxasulfone was good news, but we knew that because it's pretty safe on some pulses. Armazon really smoked it. This was bad news. I was hoping that would work because Armazon seems to work okay on the Roundup kochia. Liberty really smoked it. And this is good news because this is in crop. If we're trying to get out of vetch, say in canola, that Liberty canola, the Liberty is actually going to take it out pretty good. So that was good news. Muster was very surprising. It was very tolerant of that. And this might be good news if we're looking at sunflower, because Muster is registered in sunflower and we put vetch inside sunflower as well. Mm-hmm. Assert smoked it pretty hard. Roundup, you know, does knock it back. MCPA, this is good news. It does kill it because this gives you a rotation with like a cereal trying to get rid of the vetch in the rotation. Coral, we knew it was fairly tolerant to, so potentially we could try to control some kochia that way, maybe a little bit, but I think coral's pretty weak. Mextrol, 2,4-D and Banville really just smoke it. So if we're trying to get out of vetch, grow a crop that has these herbicides and you'll be just fine. So other ones that work good in vetch are Basagran. That's very safe on vetch, but it doesn't do much for us on kochia. So that's just the way it goes. So next slide there. We've been doing some other work here with Dr. Yvonne Lawley and Dr. Emma McGough at the U of M, and they've been looking at 60-inch row corn with having vetch seeded, or actually any of these cover crops. They had Italian ryegrass, vetch, crimson clover, or radish, and this is post herbicide application for their seeding. So around the 4 or 5 leaf stage is when we put these in. And again, last year we struggled with late season moisture, And we did grow some covers, but boy, it was hard to keep that radish alive. It actually started dying in September from just thirst. The vetch was doing pretty good. The crimson clover, it grew, but the deer were coming in on us, even though we had it fenced off. For whatever reason, they just love that stuff. And then with the Italian ryegrass, it grew okay, but it wasn't stunning or anything. Just, probably not even a half ton per acre of some of this stuff. But it did grow, and a lot of the 60-inch corn had double cobs on them. And then we compared it all to 30-inch with no covers. And this will be running another 2 years. So we're hoping to maybe catch a wet year, for example, and really see things take off.
Scott, I'm wondering. Well, that's all. The next slide's me. So I got some. Okay. I got some final questions. Just wondering, in your experience with seeding like something like vetch at the same time as the corn versus waiting till V4, V5 after herbicide, like too many farms are on Twitter and they see what you can get away with in North Carolina and Oklahoma and Kansas. Yeah. It's like, what do you see in Manitoba for either broadcasting or seeding a crop at V4, V5, like we're talking 1st of July, maybe? Just give some feedback on your experience. If is it worth it generally?
In my feeling, it's not worth it because the corn is so fast and progressive. By the time that cover comes up, especially in 30-inch rows, it's a bust. You're going to just get little seedlings, and then they start to etiolate under that shade, and they just don't thrive. You've lost the competitive factor there. But we find, seeding at the same time as the corn, and I prefer actually to do the system after May long weekend, just because the corn pops up that much faster and gives it an edge so that the corn becomes the main crop. I would fear that if you did this early in May, you're going to favor the vetch because it's more of a cool season crop, and it'll be out of the ground before in 2 weeks when the corn decides to even come up. So I would not want to give the vetch any more leeway other than emerging about the same time as the corn or later. So that's why I choose after May long weekend to do this, because I don't think the vetch would allow the corn to get ahead. It would probably start taking over, even in 30-inch row. Now with 60, I've seen it even crazier, where the vetch just becomes a monster. I call it the hairy monster, and it'll get ahead of the corn if it's seeded at the same time, for sure. And it'll crawl up on it, and the corn will do its thing, but it's in no way are you ever going to get a corn header in there or a silage system in there. It's just too crazy. So yeah. Any gap you give vetch, it's going to take over for sure.
Familiar? That's me, my beautiful wife Melanie. We've been screwing around with cover crops, corn intercrops for I forget the first time I talked to Scott. So just to touch on quickly the history of corn intercropping on our farm. So we've used corn and hairy vetch for years. To Scott's point, what he was talking about in some spots the vetch can take over. This was a low spot. You can see the lack of corn and a lot of hairy vetch. So the first time we tried this crop, I knew it was for our operation, which is mixed grain and cattle, it was a slam dunk, and we've done it every single year since we tried it the first time. It's the easiest intercrop we grow with our system, which is grain and cattle, and we have done several different iterations of the corn vetch and corn intercropping. And kind of what we wanted to focus on this past year, which was the 2022 growing season, was, okay, how do we get a herbicide option in our corn intercrop and do all the wonderful things that we're hoping to get done, provide nitrogen, increase protein source, balance our seed N, all the things that I generally talk about. So we used this past year a glyphosate-tolerant forage soybean. So what's special about this bean, as you can see on the left, the middle row is grain soybeans, which basically stay vegetative till about the summer solstice, so say 40 days. The forage soybeans, they don't flower for over 100 days. So what that does is the plant stays vegetative, and we keep those root exudates feeding the soil biology, feeding that rhizobium bacteria to produce nitrogen, capture sunlight, turn that into energy, nitrogen for the form a relationship with the rhizobium to capture nitrogen. I mean, a little for the corn crop on year one, but also I'm going to show you some soil tests from our corn intercrops, kind of what we had for residual nitrogen this past year. So on the right, that's my dad just holding up one of these soybeans in the end of July. You can see the sheer amount of leaf biomass and just how much sunlight that plant is able to capture and how much nitrogen we're going to produce as a byproduct. So we talk about carbon to nitrogen all the time. If you're not familiar with it, it's a really good thing to look up or understand if you're interested in cover cropping, but if you're interested in rotations, you name it. So the idea behind this is we've got a high carbon corn plant and corn stover. We just want to pair that with a low carbon, high protein vegetative legume. And that way we can balance that microbial diet with the high carbon corn and the very digestible legumes, forage soybeans in this case, and we achieve an ideal microbial diet. And what that does is we keep stable soil aggregates, so we can infiltrate water, air, nitrogen. We can have a functioning soil, room for biology to move and access the minerals we need to feed that plant, both in the year you're growing the intercrop and the following residual years to come from it. So something that Scott didn't mention that I meant to ask him about, and we will get to at question time, is we realized over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years that we've been screwing around with this stuff, that we basically have to sow our corn north and south. And the reason is the sun travels around the southern horizon, and what we can achieve, although in this case it's hairy vetch, what I'm going to talk about more is the forage soybeans. One time during the day, that sun is shining directly down that corn row. Whereas if we sow east-west, the sun has to penetrate, 1 row, 2 row, 3 rows before the sunlight can actually hit the soil surface where we're growing our intercrops. So you can see in these two pictures, the one on the left is the same field, same time of day, was taken of a north-south row, and the right one was of an east-west. And you can just see the different amount of sunlight that's actually able to hit the cover crop. And obviously they have a lower carbon need, like a lower sunlight need, but the more we can offer the intercrop, the better results we're going to see. So this was our trial from this past summer. So that's Darcy in the tractor, who's our next panelist. And that's his son, Vaughn, who is helping out. And this is actually only what part of the trials looked like. So there's a lot going on there. So we did, if you got questions, for sure, you can ask them in the Q&A. And for all those people that asked questions during Scott's presentation, I have since lost them. So if you could ask them again, that would be great. But what's going on here is we did obviously a variety of different row spacings. So we did 30-inch with no cover crops, 60-inch paired 60s, triple 30s with a gap, anything we could think of as far as corn spacing to maximize both corn yield and biomass production from the intercrop standpoint. We just wanted to see it in real time. And I should also say we did fertilizer trials on this piece as well. So this each intercrop spacing was replicated 3 times based on fertilizer. So some pretty interesting results, but this is so very interesting if you've heard of the wide row effect with corn, and why I think there is just so much potential with corn and corn intercropping, especially for a system like mine. But we'll talk about some of the residual nitrogen numbers, and they're crazy, and a lot of potential with this intercrop. So this is what 12 rows of corn looks like, again, with just 12 rows of corn, no sunlight on, or no competing corn on the edges. So the center rows, the 30-inch rows, averaged about 230 bushels to the acre, and the outside rows, the rows that could actually access more sunlight, were over 400 bushels. So this is from the no-till farmer. I'm assuming this is in Kansas somewhere, but it speaks to sunlight is the biggest limiting factor with corn production. So how can we manipulate, take advantage of this outside row effect by giving our corn rows more sunlight? Yes, there's less plants, but giving up less yield because we have more sunlight, and then actually giving more availability to sunlight for the intercrop. So you can see that's kind of why we had all these varying row spaces, is to see how we can manipulate this outside row effect to the most efficient way, where we're maximizing corn yield, but also like allowing sunlight to the intercrop so we can produce nitrogen, balance seed N, residual nitrogen, increase protein, all the wonderful things that that we're talking about tonight. So this is what I think has a ton of potential. So this is 3 rows at 30 inches, all boom, 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 and then 60-inch gaps. So basically we're just pulling out 1 corn row, 1 out of every 4 corn rows, we're just eliminating, and then we create these sunlight corridors. So this is facing, I'm traveling north right now, so you can see the outside 2 rows, we're going to get some outside, or not some, we're going to get a significant amount of outside row effect, and the middle row, we're still going to get some increased sunlight effect. But with those 5-foot, 60-inch gaps, it's like we can grow a substantial amount of plant biomass of the legume. So yeah, this hasn't worked out, to be perfectly honest, the last couple of years, just with the drought in 2021, and then we didn't actually get to seed this last year. But you know, the goal is getting 90 to 95% of a corn or a monocrop 30-inch corn yield, but also virtually giving up next to nothing as far as the intercrop standpoint. And this is the potential. So keep in mind, this is 1 test on 1 trial. We're going to trial this a lot more this upcoming year, but this was the 60-inch trials that we did with obviously the beans in between. That is 49 parts per million nitrogen, 100 pounds of residual nitrogen on the 60-inch corn. So this test was done in the fall. Of course, we'll do it again come spring, just once those soybean biomass actually starts breaking down. But it's the difference between keeping the plant vegetative all summer long, having a giant plant capturing sunlight, and, you know, 40 to 50% of that energy being released via root exudates to feed that rhizobium bacteria to produce that nitrogen. Just a substantial amount of residual nitrogen on these test plots. So yes, 60-inch corn, we're going to give up a bit of yield, but can we manipulate this system to maybe get, you know, paired 60s and still get this intercrop result? It's like, that is very exciting that we can grow, you know, 90 or 95% of a cash crop, and then, you know, grow our fertilizer for the following year. So we saw this, of course, most farms use 30-inch corn rows, so we still saw pretty decent results. And I should say at this point, we were not dry this year. We had pretty ideal growing conditions. Fully anticipate we have a year like 2021. We're not going to have a whole lot as far as soybean biomass, or less for sure, but we had really good moisture in June and July, got pretty dry in August, but no, some really good conditions. But even on the 30-inch, we were seeing 27 parts per million residual nitrogen. Again, that was taken in the fall, so we anticipate those numbers are likely going to go up come spring. But 50 pounds residual N, it's like, if nitrogen's $1 a pound, well, this is a really good option. And by far the biggest value add for us, these are our cows grazing our corn residue this fall. So after we combine the corn, kick the cows out, we actually got feet of snow just a few days after I took this picture. substantially reduced our grazing days. We've maybe got 50 cows per acre per day. But in a year like 2019, which this picture is taken, we had, this crop was corn and hairy vetch, substantial hairy vetch growth. It was pretty incredible. We were grazing 125 cows per acre per day after we combined. So depending on what you value that crop at, or your grazing days at, let's call it even $2 a day, which is pretty reasonable. You know, that's an additional $250 an acre. So a lot of potential here. And of course, snow is generally the biggest limiting factor, but if you don't have the plants in place, you know, you're never going to get results like that, whether it snows or not. And this picture, so the cows have been out for a day on this specific paddock. Cows love hairy vetch so bloody much that they were walking past corn cobs to go and access that hairy vetch. So it's a really, really nice combination, and for sure a lot of potential. And this is just a really interesting observation we saw from the summer. So the soybeans, of course, are a warm season legume. The corn's a warm season cereal. We had a couple nights of frost, so 2 nights of -1. The corn was nipped by the frost, and anywhere there was soybeans in corn, the soybeans were fine. They did not get nipped by the frost at all. And anywhere there was soybeans and no corn, the soybeans died. Anywhere there was soybeans in and amongst the corn, even on the picture on the right, you see the 60-inch corn, the soybeans were not affected at all. So it was something I was concerned about. You know, sometimes we get a frost on the 6th of September, but yes, the corn life was terminated by the frost a little bit earlier. I want to say the 10th of September, our first frost was, but the soybeans grew right into the end of September, might even have been early October before they were actually terminated by the frost. So just an interesting observation. And this is a buddy of mine who did it as well. He sowed these forage soybeans at V5. I didn't think it was going to work. I thought the corn would be way too tall by the time those beans filled in, or the beans actually established from a seed to a vegetative plant. But it did work out much better than what I anticipated. I wouldn't say he would have comparable growth than if it was seeded the same time, but we got a video of him silaging here. So that little caption says there wasn't much going in the header, but you can see what it looked like, the forage bean trials versus the monocrop corn. So just about keeping something growing, vegetative, producing residual nitrogen for next year. And neat to see that, even sowed at V4, V5, it actually worked, because my understanding, or my network of people that had tried this, interseeding corn at V4, V5, just there isn't a lot of success stories to be had. So kind of neat to see this worked. Again, it was a good year. We had pretty good moisture in the spring. So yeah, just a warning on that. So hopefully the technical difficulties for the evening are done. Darcy, if you want to take your mic, and are we going to see you? Oh, hell yeah, we're working. I'm the only one that screwed this up. So
that's good.
Do tell us about yourself and your beautiful family there. And we'll get into your presentation. Of course, I know it well, so I'll ask the stereotypical Joe questions, but yeah, have at her, man. Just let me know when you want to change slides.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me, Joe. That's me and my wife Shane and our 4 kids. We farm alongside with my dad, my mom, and my brother and his wife and son. We're a mixed farm, and we farm just right beside here in Clearwater.
So maybe Stu, just talk about your system. Like, of course, you've got grain and cattle before you actually talk about this specific crop that kind of got you going. But yeah, just talk a little bit about your operation and winter feed, and then what's going on here.
So we're kind of slowly transitioning a little bit, I guess, feeding a little bit differently. But when we first went down this path in 2019, we were, silaging. We had a feedlot, so we'd, fill up the feedlot and haul all the corn silage here and feed them. And that slowly transitioned to start growing more cover crops for silage, and then growing corn. And we put it up for high moisture corn to feed the calves.
So what's going on here?
This is, I think, and going down the path of regenerative ag, I think it's so important to have a success the first time. And this is 2019, and we had a corn crop that I don't know, we had hairpinning issues, gopher issues, and just crop insurance said, destroy it. And I didn't really want to do that. And this is in July 5th about. And so I ended up going to the shop and grabbing every seed I could find. And I thought, well, if I get any corn at all, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's all going to cow feed anyways. Broadcast everything I could find on the field, and then I heavy harrowed it twice, and we got the right rain at the right time a couple days after. And the unfortunate part about this whole thing was it was 2019 in September and October for 2019. We didn't get a chance to get a good representation of silaging it because 3 feet of snow will knock that stuff down, no matter how you cut it. So
then what was the plan for next year? I think this was next year, just judging by how big Vaughn is.
Yeah. So this is 2020, and by this time we kind of, you and I are talking. I'm talking to a few other guys about, hairy vetch and corn and how it seems to work in their systems. And then, we spend a winter listening to podcasts and watching YouTube and hearing about 60-inch corn and how, there could be a real opportunity there. So we took 30 acres here, and again, it was, we haven't been able to replicate it. It was just the perfect year for it. We do have other kids than Vaughn, and I do bring them along with me. He just likes helping out the most, so that's why he's in every picture. So 2020 we grew the 60-inch corn with hairy vetch interseeded, and it was just a real, I don't know, it worked out really, really well. There was a pile of biomass. The yield on the corn, because we did end up combining it, it wasn't, it was maybe a little disappointing.
Stu, maybe just talk, because I don't know if yield does us any good, just the difference in yield about with the 30-inch than the 60-inch, because like yield's really variable depending on how much moisture you got, how much fertilizer you put on, what type of land. But what was the difference between the 60 and the 30?
I think we were probably right around 70%, 65, 70%. I mean, we're going back a couple of years now, but I don't know, probably what I'd heard through the winter and stuff, that we'd be hopefully closer to that 85. So that's where the disappointment came from. But I mean, it was an unbelievable corn growing season. So it did turn out quite well. And then we were able to graze the cows. We had 100 heifers out there till a couple days before Christmas. And to be quite honest, we should have left them out there till the new year. It worked out really well.
So with that being said, I mean, 2021, nothing worked. We produced a lot of grasshopper food. So talk about what you did this year. Obviously, we're talking about the exact same forage beans, but just what you did, I guess, like seeding rates and seeding direction. What's your seeding tool? Like, how did you actually implement this?
Well, our seeding tool is we've got a planter, a 30-inch John Deere. I don't know, I pick a number. It's a John Deere planter. It works well. Mm-hmm. And then we use a ease-on air drill to put the soybeans or the forage beans and hairy vetch in. That drill is for sale if anybody wants it. It's gonna smoke an odd deal. So it's not a
hang
great.
on. I was trying to hawk my Bordeaux last webinar. So let's just, I'll sell mine first before anyone's buying a seed dog.
If you get any calls, then let me know, because it's not a great seeding tool, but it does the trick. And yeah, no, so I wrote that down. We went 13 pounds of forage beans. I had 6 pounds of hairy vetch in there, and then we went 16,000 plants on the corn. So what we did was we planted the beans and the vetch together. We inoculated them together and solid seeded those, and then came back that afternoon and planted the corn.
The corn. So this is what it looked like, Stu, when I took this picture. That's my truck running there. I guess just talk about, we got some videos coming up. Just in case this whole thing crashes again, I'm very nervous about these videos, but just in case that does happen, maybe talk about kind of what you saw when you were chopping it. I know what you use for fertilizer, and maybe it's important to touch on how you achieved these results with the amount of fertilizer you did, just as a warning for farms. But yeah, just talk about like the actual harvesting day and like how it went and you know, kind of expectations versus reality.
Yeah, so with it being such a low population on the corn, and you know, I guess I wasn't expecting much out of getting much of the beans through the header and into the pile. Just I didn't know what to expect. But the beans, and again, we don't have anything new. It's kind of a worn out machine that we've used to custom work or custom silage, so it's seen a lot of acres. But the beans, we had no problem putting them through the forage harvester. So
I'm gonna try this video, Stu. If it sounds too loud and you can't talk, just let it play, but try talking through it.
Okay.
Oh, it is a little loud. So what were you getting as far as, do you think, as far as a percentage of beans in the header, and what did you have for issues?
Well, until I saw this video, when you were out there with me, kind of taking a look at it, I didn't know what was going in, because I would look behind the machine and there was a pile of beans left behind. But through the video, and you could slow it down, and you could really see that there's quite a bit of the leaves coming into the header. And I would guess we probably got 60%, maybe a little bit more the bean plant. As far as adding yield or tonnage, I'm not too sure, you know, what it would have equated to and the percentage in the pile. But no, it was quite a, yeah,
We got another
happy.
video here. We got another video here, Stu, that probably shows the amount of beans coming in. It's probably a little loud too, so maybe just let it play. So when I drove out to the field and drove in there, I had two thoughts. One, it's pretty cool. This field is lush green. It was unlike any corn silage field I had ever seen. But the second one was, oh shit, that's too bad. There's nothing getting in the header. But well, I mean, you can see the color of the corn and the color of the silage. So yeah, there was a lot more getting in when you were riding there looking down than met the eye, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like there's a lot out there, but when you're walking across the field and the cows, I mean, I would have liked them to be out there a little bit longer, but they cleaned it up relatively quick. So I don't know how much was left behind, but it was nice seeing, like you said, a lush green field for the cows to go into.
Well, and I mean, obviously there was, I mean, you can just look at the pile of the corn pile. I again, I'm worried about the video freezing, but it's like, if you look at the picture of the corn and then look at the picture of the pile, you know, that was my hand there grabbing that chopped silage. There were definitely green, like there was soybeans in there. The pile was a green color.
Yeah, it's we actually haven't even opened up that pit yet. We've kind of been saving it, and I'm excited to see what it's like, because like you said, usually when your corn gets hit with frost and it's white like that, you kind of, I don't know, it's a disappointing thing, because you know, this corn crop looks so great all year, an early frost, and then your pile's brown, and you know, you're worried about kernels heating and the different things like that. But going into the pile, it looked really, really good, and considering how brown the corn was, yeah, it was nice to see.
So a few farms have asked me, what effect do you think this would have on the moisture of the silage pile? Like, if you're, obviously those beans are alive and well, and probably, you know, I don't know, 85 or 90% moisture. Like, can you see it becoming an issue from that standpoint, which is too much moisture?
Yeah, I guess that's possible. You know, over the years, we've been doing corn silage for 12 years now. You know, it seems very rare that the corn silage is too moist. You know, usually it dries down a little too quick, and having a little extra moisture there, generally, I don't think will hurt too much. It seems like we do a lot more corn at 55% than we had at, you know, that 65% where you really want to see it. So it might affect it. You might have to wait a little longer, but I don't think. Yeah.
Well,
So here.
What I was going to say is probably a good idea would be just wait, you know, like just let the corn dry down. Like, there's still a majority of the plant biomass is going to be corn, right? So it's like the corn doesn't have to dry down very far, you know, to make up that difference of the moisture provided by the beans.
And you're still going to be getting lots of, you know, lush green beans in that pile. So we'll offset that brown corn, I guess, too. So, so this strip here, we got finished chopping that, you and I did, and you said, would you mind leaving a strip so you can combine and do a trial with the combine? I said, it's no problem. I'll just put a poly wire up. That's not a big deal. And my fence worked about as well as yeah, it would when you try and put it up in 10 minutes, but the cows knocked it down.
The path to hell is paved with good intentions.
So yeah, the cows, they knocked the fence down or got in there, and I thought, well, the hell with this. I'm just going to let them go in there. And I thought, well, this is kind of neat to see, because we've never grazed corn. So I kind of wanted to see what they do to the residue and how they clean it up. And, you know, there wasn't a pile left over. They did a really good job of knocking down the stalks and cleaning up the corn and the beans. So I was quite impressed with that.
What did you see as far as bean residue that was left out there?
There is some, more of the stalks. The leaves are basically gone now, or was in the fall. Whether they blew away or the cows ate them, I'm not too sure. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what's there in the spring. But yeah, going into the winter, it didn't look like, it looked like even our oldies on drill could make it through there next spring.
Yeah, well, it can't make it through much because it's similar. Cool. Well, great job, Stu. And I think that's all we got here. So let's see if I've got the capability to do this. Yes, I do. How am I going to get all of us up at once? Gallery. Look at that. I did it. All right. So we got question period. So Scott, if you want to, if you're still awake, hopefully you didn't get too bored there. You can come back on. So I'm going to throw a question to you guys and be as detailed as you want. So Stu, you should give proper context when talking about your fertilizer rates. But Scott, I know you've got some really good data on this as well. So the number one question is, how much can I reduce my nitrogen without giving up any yield? And Scott, I'll say to you also, how is that nitrogen application affecting nodulation on the legume? So Scott, if you want to tackle that first, then Stu, just talk about kind of what you did and maybe what you're going to do in the future on your farm.
Okay, so inoculants on the vetch, we do inoculate with P inoculant, and we do check for nodulation in the corn, and they all did nodulate. We try to pin down the date, and I'm sorry I don't have a date of when nodulation started, but I feel like it was mid-June, and that kind of makes sense because by the time the corn is pretty much sucked up its entire budget, or at least half of it, maybe that's enough for nodulation to occur. But certainly in some of our pea canola work, anytime you apply nitrogen in that system, you're just hampering nodulation. It's very, very potent. We actually find better nodulation with greater phosphorus too. So the more phos you can afford, the better nodulation you're going to have in whatever legume. Fertilizer, we were applying, I think about 100 pounds of N, and that was with the soil test, it would have been 120 pounds. And so I'm sure you could go more, as much as you can afford. I wouldn't go past 165 because that's kind of where we draw the line for grain production in corn. But as terms of what's minimum amounts, in my opinion, I would not go below 100 in this system. You have, if you've got hybrid corn growing, you have to feed it. So don't starve it. Whatever you can afford, go for it. But you know, with the vetch, maybe that's more further research to find out what nitrogen rate actually just inhibits nodulation in vetch, and to what extent that pulse becomes more like a weed that you're just feeding nitrogen. But it is a thing. All pulses will take the free lunch first before it has to make its own lunch. So
well, and the reason, and actually it was Darcy was the one that had mentioned to me, what about a longer season forage soybean to put with the corn? But it was kind of the reason why I wanted to go with the soybeans was, to your point, Scott, and Darcy, I know you've seen this too. It's like, before you get any amount of measurable vetch biomass, the corn's 5 or 6 feet tall, and starting to reduce nitrogen need when the vetch is finally actually like propagating and creating the mat that we see in the pictures. So there's a gap there, and if I wasn't, like, if Trav was here and I wasn't worried about my computer crashing, I would have shown a time lapse we did this year of the corn and soybeans growing together. And when the corn's 5 feet tall, those soybeans are only about this big. Most of the growth, same with hairy vetch, comes in like August. If we can catch an August rain with those legumes, it's amazing what they'll do. But at that point, like, the corn's going to be tasseling right away and basically done with uptaking nitrogen when those plants are actually absolutely maximizing nitrogen production. So
that's right.
To Scott's point, I would do trials. It annoys me so much that farms go corner to corner with the exact same treatment on 100% of the field, having a 50% trial and maybe a no fertilizer trial. I just think it's such an amazing opportunity to learn and understand. Because I mean, Scott, you're doing great work, but it's like every time you introduce a new variable into your research, I mean, look how many years you could spend testing that, you know. We got to start getting curious and doing this stuff on our own farm. So with that being said, Stu, I know now, tell us what you did. and we gave a proper caveat because we don't, I don't think just anyone should be trying this. You've been incorporating a really thoughtful system for the last 5 or 6 years, but what did you use for fertilizer on that crop? And I guess, how did it yield?
That crop, nothing. We just
So give context though. Context though.
Yeah, no. So the last 2 years, how did we break that up? And we broke it in 2020, and we grazed stalkers on it. Rotationally grazed them, and then again we went back, and actually it wasn't planned on, but we went back and did the exact same thing the next year. Also, we fed cattle out there on that piece of land, and other things. What did it yield on that piece? In that 10 to 11 ton an acre range. And then, we did have some corn and vetch this year, and it too, we had no fertilizer on it either. We've put manure on it. We fed cows. We've grazed cows out there, and it was 110. We combined that. Right.
I forgot you did that. And to be perfectly honest on that, those trials that we did, very small sample size. Like I forget how many treatments had no fertilizer. And the context is I have been farming that without fertilizer for the last, I guess it's been 7 years now, but everything's been intercropped. There's been a plant growing every single day, except 2021 where literally nothing ever grew. But we didn't see any. I mean, this is what's exciting about these kind of getting into these long-term systems is we did not see any yield reduction, zero fertilizer, half fertilizer, or full rate fertilizer. And to Scott's point, our forage soybeans, where there was 50 pounds fertilizer and 100 pounds, did not nodulate until likely the end of July. Where there was no synthetic fertilizer, they nodulated right away, which is pretty interesting. And I'm not sure where the testing goes from there. I mean, I guess that's anticipated results, but very interesting. But the thing I want to take away the most is if you're just trying this for the first time and haven't had, an 8-year rotation with cover crops and intercrops, you should fertilize the same. Do the tests, see what works on your farm. But I was telling Scott this before everyone came on, is like, I don't want anyone calling me in August and saying, hey, I didn't put any fertilizer on my corn. WTF, man, what's going on here? Okay, guys. So just for people that are on, when you lost me there for 5 minutes, I lost all the questions to Scott. And there were 10 questions out there. I didn't read them, but if you want them answered, you got to re-ask them. But let's talk about seeding rates. So Scott, I know you touched on really quick that trial with the hairy vetch. You were talking 20 pounds, but just and Stu, you can touch on the forage beans or really any intercrop. But what are you seeding as far as, Stu, what are you doing next year in your corn as far as corn population, vetch and forage soybeans? And then Scott, just maybe touch on, because you got the most experience here, what you're doing for intercrop seeding rates. So Stu, you go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to go with probably closer to 24,000 plants of corn. And then I'll probably, 15, 20 pounds of beans. And then I just like having hairy vetch in there. It's if you can get it to come through, it's a living root right up till frost. So longer. I'll probably keep, put 4 or 5 pounds of hairy vetch in there as well.
Scott, what are you seeing?
Yeah. I wouldn't go below 10 pounds for vetch. And I wouldn't plant it later after the corn comes up, like at say V4. I like putting it in at the same time, and population of corn can be quite variable. I would say whatever you can afford, but I wouldn't go less than probably 24,000, just like Darcy.
Well, that's good because I'm going to do the same.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to do is basically 32,000 plants minus every fourth row to try and get like a sunlight corridor. So that's going to work out to right in around the 24,000. And then I think the sweet spot with the beans is probably somewhere around 20 pounds. They're smaller seed size. I think that's around 45,000 plants per acre. And to stick with the theme, this is my system. I don't think you want to use hairy vetch if you're silaging. Like to Scott's point, there's challenges when you use it for grain. It is an issue sometimes, more of a pain in the ass than anything. But even in 2019, with phenomenal vetch growth, some spots we left like maybe less than 1% of the field, but even with really good vetch growth, like it can be an issue on the header. But we're gonna throw in 2 pounds of hairy vetch too. Just works too well, and you get a year where the hairy vetch is like, it's a good hairy vetch year. It just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing, and the cows absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So we had a really good question that kind of touched on Scott's initial point about nitrogen sharing in row. So somebody was wondering, like, what's the right seeding tool to use here? Like how we're applying the stuff. And Scott, do you think there's anything to getting the hairy vetch or the forage soybeans in the same row as the corn?
I don't think it's worth complicating anything too much. If you're doing beans and corn, or soybean and corn, I would say just go at the same time. Personally, if you could do directly in the middle, like with the planter, that's great. With the vetch, we just use our seed hawk. We solid seed our vetch with our fertilizer blend, and then we plant right into it directly. So some of the rows are intermingled, I guess. That would be like, I guess 30% of the rows hit a corn row, but the others don't. And the idea I like about it is that on a wet year where you're going to have a lot of nitrate leaching, that corn's going to catch that nitrate and then that moisture is going to move it out of the profile of the vetch. So the vetch can probably start fixing its own nitrogen with having the corn rooting deep. I think in the last couple of years, we've been living on mineralization fertilizer. So never cut back because we can't forward predict the weather, seasons in advance. But do soil tests, make sure it's there.
Stu, what are you doing for planting next year?
Probably much the same thing as we did this year. We'll solid seed the beans and then come back and use the planter to do the corn. I think if there was ever a way to, I'm not a mechanical guy at all, but there's 15-inch spacings on planters. If you could alternate those rows and do it all in one pass, that would be ideal. I don't know if that's possible, but that would be something that I would, if the technology is there, it would be nice to be able to do.
Yeah, I think there is farms out there with 15-inch planters that are seriously looking into it. If it works, that is an absolute no-brainer, a one-pass system to get that in. I hope it works for them because I will literally do the exact same thing. Okay, we got a really good question here, which both of you will have superb input on. So Anton Zettler, put your Your name's familiar. I feel like you already won a jacket. I'm very suspicious. But put your name and address in. You're going to win the jacket. So, Scott, you talked about the importance of choosing next year's crop following vetch, herbicide option to terminate it. Wondering if there's anything you can sow directly into vetch that overwintered that you can actually take for a cash crop. So, Stu, I know you tried this, so why don't you talk about it first, and then Scott, just any experience you got on the topic would be great.
Yeah, no, we planted hairy vetch fall of 2021, I guess it was, with the intentions of planting canola with it, Roundup Ready canola this the spring of 2022. Management issues, I messed up on a couple things. You know, I got we missed on a pass of herbicide, which really I think hurt the yield of the canola. I just got a text here tonight. I'm hoping to get the hairy vetch finally cleaned, so I'll have a good idea of how much it kind of ran. Yeah, it's anytime I've wanted it to overwinter. Yeah, it worked out really well. So there's lots of hairy vetch there, anyways.
Scott, you ever tried anything that crazy?
I'm a little sketched out about keeping the vetch alive. And the reason is because it's coming in two stages. So you got one that overwinters as a rosette that maybe was leftovers, kept growing. And then you got the dormant seed that is going to ghost next year. And so even if you try to keep alive the one that was in the fall that was already, you know, kind of a rosette to take it to seed, you're going to have this other one that's going to be a late bloomer and becoming very prolific when you don't want it to be. So you're going to have two stages. I don't want to battle that. I would rather just go in with a cereal that you can use either Mextral 2,4-D or Banville or Dicamba or whatever to take it out. That's my opinion. Do not go in with a pulse. Do not go in with a Roundup Ready crop if you're going in for the grain, because it's just going to be a nightmare. So.
And I can't get vetched over winter on my farm.
Yeah.
I hear everyone talk about, oh, I'm like, what if it becomes an issue? I'm like, I would love to harvest hairy vetch seed just one time on my farm. I can't get it to happen.
Well, we do it fairly successfully with rye. We seed rye and vetch at the same time. For whatever reason, our seed works, but we have grown it multiple years under harsh conditions, and maybe we have adapted it to the area. It used to be 17% survival, then it went to 53, and now we're at like 92% survival over winter. So it's just the way it worked for us.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and group a few questions together here, guys. We got some questions about corn grazing, and I might be the panel expert here, but Stu, you tried something very similar to this, but Scott, you got lots of experience on corn populations. So they're wondering about low corn population on 30-inch, so 15 to 20,000 plants of corn, and then either forage soybeans or vetch or some combination of both between the rows for grazing. So I know, Stu, you haven't grazed corn and corn intercrops. Scott, if you got any experience, feel free. But maybe guys just talk about what to expect. I mean, it sounds pretty similar to what you did, Stu, this year, but just give your feedback. Stu first, and then Scott, and then I'll if I got any burning thoughts, I'll add them.
Yeah, like we went with 16,000, and I think, in a grazing situation, if you take it early enough, yeah, I think there'd be real potential there. I think if you were to wait and graze that corn in You know, January after a couple feet of snow, I don't think those beans will stay up, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
And then you've got way less corn than you would have if you went a higher population. But
Scott?
Yeah, I would say stay. I like the 24,000 rate. Stay high because you're going to need corn that is high, like you mentioned, when it does snow. I've seen producers lose out on the vetch with 2 feet of snow, and the cattle or whatever just can't scratch enough to get to it. And if you're banking on that for energy, you're going to need all that energy above ground, up high where the animals can get to it, in my opinion. And then you could come back in the spring and polish it off. Why not? But you make sure you got something there.
Yeah, I would echo exactly what those guys said. And I mean, the coming back in the spring is, you almost have to, if you're screwing around with the corn intercrops. I mean, again, we do it every year just because the potential is so fantastic. It lowers our risk. I mean, it just works super in our system. The issue is always snow. But like in a year like 2019, we never fed a bale till mid-February because they were grazing corn stover and corn intercrop. Well, it doesn't take a rocket. You don't need too many 2019s to make that really, really pay. Like, it's just, and the added benefit of having a legume with the corn as far as carbon and nitrogen, like we just see it with water infiltration. Some of our best water infiltration numbers come in a corn with good established intercrops. But it makes sense. There's a balanced diet there for the biology to keep those soil aggregates stable. It's just, we have a functioning soil. It's a really good idea to try and keep that balanced. And I mean, you got a pile of minerals tied up in that corn residue. Really good idea to start breaking that corn stover down without paying for, going to Viterra and paying for the nitrogen to do it for you. Scott, I'm wondering, the north to south thing. Have you guys done that? Do you always do it? Do you think I'm crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. I think in a cover crop situation, like you mentioned, it needs that whatever 1 to 2 hour break of sunshine. But if you're just monocrop corn, I don't think it matters. In my opinion, but no, we've never done the work, so I really shouldn't say
I would say if you're doing monocrop corn, it should always be east-west, because you just capture more sunlight, right? Like, it's, you got 3 rows of corn there that's going to capture some form of that energy, whereas north-south, like, there's just a very obvious
it shouldn't matter.
Sorry, Scott, you're breaking up just a little. Hopefully that doesn't become an issue. Hopefully it's nothing I'm doing. Sorry guys, I'm just so we got a question about corn grazing on paddocks. Scott, do you have any experience, or just like farm experience on grazing corn?
I don't understand the question. I've been around it a bit, but
Yeah,
paddocks, just go in, swath, whatever you can, throw some temporary posts in or whatever, and break it up. Don't send them all in at once.
That is the question. I think the hold up for a lot of farms that are using or grazing corn and want to try intercrops is like the snow issue. Are they going to get a benefit if I mean, sure, kick them out in spring, they're going to gain the value. But Scott, maybe just touch on, because I don't know if everyone understands C/N. In fact, I'm sure that is not the case. But just like, if you're going corn grazing on corn grazing on corn grazing, just the positive effect that just establishing a legume on that same field, even if a cow doesn't eat it, just what it's going to have on like the mineral breakdown in the soil?
Well, I do know peas, for example, they change the pH of the soil around their roots, and that unlocks a lot of nutrients. That, like for example, phosphorus, it'll unlock that. Just having diversity is probably good for the system. I've seen corn on corn in a grazing situation where it's gone on over 6 years, and they end up not having to add any fertilizer because it becomes so rank with nitrates and phos buildup, because you're really only exporting 10% of whatever you put on the field. So the other 90% stays in the field. And of course you get nitrate leaching, but if you're going back with corn, it probably catches up to it and then picks it up again. So I don't know how long you can abuse that system of corn on corn on corn until the bugs start catching up with you, like literally cutworms and disease and things like that. So let alone the weeds, because you're spraying over and over the same thing.
Right. Yes. So I'm just gonna, guys, we're gonna do one more question, then I'm gonna get your final thoughts. So I'm just gonna hammer out a few of these quick. Jaeger was wondering if the forage soybeans would be easier as far as harvesting, like less tangling. I can tell you that's 100% true. The forage soybeans drop their leaves. Honestly, you can hardly notice they're there once we've had enough frost for them to drop their leaves. It is as easy as doing monocrop corn. There's no issue. Maybe really quickly, Scott, I don't know if you've done anything as far as foliar on corn intercrops, but somebody's wondering about melted urea on a corn intercrop, what that might do, positive or negative, to the intercrop.
Any form of nitrogen at the right time, so that would be before at least a ½ inch of rain or more, is going to be good. So as long as you have green leaves in the corn, or you're probably...
Well, hopefully Scott's still there. Stu, you can hear me, eh?
Oh yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. Well, hopefully, maybe Scott will hop back here. Hopefully he's just in a really long-winded answer, but we're gonna do the final thoughts. So I'm hopefully mine's a little different than yours, which is a little different than Scott's. But basically, you've had a long winter to think about lots of different things, I'm sure, but I know corn's a staple on your farm. What, as far as final thoughts, 2 things. Oh, looks like we lost Scott. Hopefully he comes back for final thoughts. But 2 things. So what is your system going to look like for next year? And then somebody who's on this webinar for the very first time and just trying out. Hey, Scott, sorry we lost you there. So Scott, we're just going to do final thoughts. So I'm going to ask Stu what he's doing on his farm for next year, and then just some very, very simple advice for somebody that's coming on and hearing this information the first time, where you screwed up and what you definitely wouldn't do again. And Scott, maybe just from your standpoint, same thing, where you screwed up, make it easy for somebody that wants to try this, and hopefully we can avoid wrecks. But then I know you're doing some pretty cutting edge research on this stuff. What excites you kind of for the future of corn intercropping? So Stu, we'll start with you, then Scott, and of course I'm excited about this intercrop as well.
Yeah, as far as the corn and beans, we're going to scale up on it. I mean, I guess we had success with the hairy vetch the first time too, and it seemed easy, but the big leaves on the beans, it seems to make so much sense in our system. We're going to come back and the plan is to combine the corn again.
more acres this year. Probably it's going to be on new land, as far as, you know, stuff that's not quite as far as advanced in the with having cattle on it. So we're going to use some fertilizer. How much, I go back and forth. I'm going to twist some people's ear and see what they think. You know, what was the second part? That what am I excited for?
Well, just what's some really easy advice you can give to somebody who's just starting out? They want to do a corn intercrop, and you know, they don't want to wreck or harvest issues. And you can take it a little bit further, or it's like something you've tried along the journey where you're like, that was a really good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I think the standard advice would be start small, right? That's I think everybody kind of, you know, whatever you're comfortable with, whether it's 5 acres or 1 acre, 20 acres, start small. But I think bigger than that is set yourself up to be successful in whatever you're trying. Get as much information as you can. Listen to as many podcasts, YouTube, make the phone calls that you need to make, because there is a lot of people out there trying these things, and you know, a lot of people have made mistakes. So, you know, just set yourself up to have success, and I guarantee you, if you have success, you're going to be hooked. It's changed the way we farm here.
It's a pretty visually appealing crop, isn't it?
Every day you go out there and it's something new, right? It's whether you're looking above the ground or below the soil, there's changes happening all the time.
Yeah. Scott, hope we better get you before we lose you again.
Oh, I'm getting tired of this comm stream. I must have to get fiber
optics.
Anyway, failures would be choosing a variety that was low cobbing, where you can't harvest or have that option to harvest. Seeding too early, where the vetch gets ahead of things. You don't want that. So after a long weekend of May, my choice, don't cut on your nitrogen rate, because that's your bread and butter. We just don't know enough of how much we can cut back. Of course, that just, in my opinion, it would be lower yielding overall. Things that I'm looking forward to, I really want to try the corn soybean system and start poking away at that one and finding out what makes that tick. My scary feelings on all this is herbicide resistant and bringing in multiple species, because that limits what you get to use in crop, for example, or pre-crop. I'm scared about hairy vetch dormancy, and it causing problems next year. So make sure you have that plan in place of how to rotate out of it. That's where I kind of like the soybean idea too, because it's a little more friendly that way. I find we've never had nitrate issues in the vetch late frost. We've tested it, and we've never been able to detect it. So that's good news. With the soybean, I'm not sure how that works. I imagine there's a risk there if you've got frost coming in, nipping the leaves, but leaving the plant alive, like the stems, you probably have high nitrate that way. But that's not a problem if it's going in a silage pile as much. So, but these are things we got to look forward to and forage ahead with. You know, we're always learning and always trying to do better. So just how agriculture works.
Sometimes the pace is a little too slow for my liking, Scott, but I'm sure you're the same. To touch on what Stu said, we're pretty excited about this in our seriously, in a grain and cattle system. It just works so damn well. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to do the triple 30-30-30 with a gap. So just a quarter less plants to try and establish more intercrop, like the soybean and vetch intercrop. But the prospect of having a cash crop at reduced inputs that I can graze and produce fertilizer for the following year, it just checks way too many boxes to not make more of a practice on the farm. So I see we've lost Scott, Stu. I guess my best advice is just try. I mean, this as far as intercrops go is the easiest one. You get all your herbicide options, and I mean, pretty low risk as far as how it's going to affect the corn. Do the nitrogen testing, take a lot of pictures, get curious, and get excited about farming. It is, I can speak for myself, but I know I can speak for you too, Stu. There ain't many days that I go by without going to check some of these interesting crops, and it's a humble reminder of why you do it, which is for the lifestyle and the curiosity and the the interest of improving. So yeah, this is a pretty good one, and this will be a staple around our place for a while. So hopefully, or if Scott can hear, that's it. We appreciate, sorry about all the technical difficulty, everyone. Appreciate everyone being on, especially to Scott and Stu. They did a great job. The webinar is going to be up in a couple days on YouTube. So if you want to see anything, missed anything, yeah, you can check it out there. So thanks a lot, everyone. Have a really great night. Scott, Stu, thanks a million. Very much appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks.